Hi guys! Today I'm filming a long overdue tag. The tag is called You haven't read that yet? The hell is wrong with you? I'm kidding, of course. The idea of this tag is by no means to shame anyone for what they have read or haven't read, but rather to recommend books to people. And I was tagged to do this by Joe from Joe Reads Books a long time ago. I just haven't got around to do this yet. The original creator of the tag is Chris from Chris's Book Nook, I think. I will leave the links to Joe's and Chris's videos down below. I'm not sure if my books choices are that different to any other average English-speaking reader, because I read mostly in English, but I tried to choose some books that I haven't maybe talked about that much. So, let's get started. The first book on my list is The Shock of the Fall by Nathan Filer. I read this last year, I think, and I really enjoyed this. It was one of my favorites of last year, and this tells about this boy Matthew, who kind of tells a story about how his little brother died. And there's a mental illness involved, but I'm not gonna say anything more about that so as not to spoil this book. But what really grabbed me was the back of the book saying, "I'll tell you what happened because it will be a good way to introduce my brother. His name is Simon. I think you're going to like him, I really do, but in a couple of pages he'll be dead, and he was never the same after that." And yeah, the writing style was really interesting as well. It kind of keeps switching. It's like a personal diary almost, but then there's like the writing style keeps switching, so there's like words on the page in a poetry form, and then there's some illustrations, and yeah, I just really like this. The second book on my list is Neil Gaiman's Neverwhere. I think I read this book when I was 14, 15. It was one of the first Neil Gaiman books I read, and it's still one of my favorites. And it tells about this guy, Richard Mayhew, who helps this girl who's bleeding on the street. And after he's helped her, he kind of becomes invisible for the normal people in his life. His fiancée and his work colleagues and that sort of thing, and then he kind of tries to find out what's happened and ends up finding this underground London, which is full of all sorts of creatures, from angels to assassins. I liked it and I recommend it. Next up is my favorite classic of all time, and that's The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I think everyone pretty much knows the basic storyline. There's this young dashing guy who gets a portrait made out of him, and I can't exactly remember what happens, but somehow all these sins and bad deeds that he does are kind of transferred to the portrait. While he remains youthful and beautiful and handsome, the portrait kind of starts to get uglier and uglier, and it's this classic horror story, and I just really liked it. The dialogue is really witty because it's Oscar Wilde, and yeah, and I think it's a kind of take on how vain people are and how beauty is like all we appreciate and that sort of stuff. But yeah, I highly recommend this classic. It's still my favorite one. Next up is One Day by David Nichols. This one I read a couple of years ago, probably in 2009 when this was published. And this tells about Emma and Dexter, who meet up on the last day of the university, a day before their graduation. And they kind of become friends, and they keep meeting once a year on San Sweeteen's Day, I think, was it? Basically it just follows them from the late 80s to 2006, I think, and tells about like what goes on in their life, and it was really heart-wrenching and bittersweet. I just liked it, but it is really sad as well. So, and it has one of my favorite quotes at the back of the book as well, and it says, "You're gorgeous, you old hag, and if I could give you just one gift ever for the rest of your life, it would be this: confidence. It would be the gift of confidence, either that or a scented candle." And the last book I have talked about on my channel before. I just could not include it in this list because it's the book that I'm most shocked people haven't read, probably. And you can probably guess it already. That's Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. This is the Finnish edition of the book, first book. I think this will always be one of my favorite book series because I grew up with Harry, as many people did. I owe that to my mom, actually. I probably wouldn't have picked this up if she hadn't bought the first two books for me, because some bookseller had recommended them. And yeah, it was love from ever since. I read the first two books. I was supposed to get the third one, I think, for Christmas or something, and I just couldn't wait, so I ended up opening it beforehand. And pretty much all the following books I ended up queuing outside the bookstore to get the book as soon as possible. The bookshops here are not allowed to open at midnight, so we had to actually stay there the full night, and then the bookshop opened probably about 10 or noon the next day. But it was so much fun. I have so many memories of those queue parties, line parties as we called them. I've made so many friends through the Harry Potter fandom. All the films and all the places I've been, like the parks and the studios. It's just been an amazing journey, and I will probably always reread the Harry Potters and love them as much as the first time, because it's just so magical and so good, and I highly recommend if you haven't read this series yet. So those are top 5 books that I'm shocked that people haven't read yet, and I recommend you read each and every one of them. That's it for this tag. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will tag some people down below to do this, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!